What's up? It's your boy back at it again with another video in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Today we got Robert Urbanek. He's a medalist at the 2015 Worlds, a couple times in the European Championship Finals for discus. He's a discus thrower from Poland. This is him at Halle, Germany, or Halle. I don't know. I'm illiterate. What can I say? I probably also butchered his name. Sorry. He's I think around a 67-meter discus thrower, and I'll link all his achievements and his personal best and his height and weight in the video description, like always. I think he's severely underrated because he's a world championship medalist and nobody really talks about him. And I want to give him his flowers because I actually really like his technique. And I think he was really overshadowed because, one, he just never threw 70 meters. And if you don't throw 70 meters, nobody really talks about you really that much past your retirement. And that's really sad. But I really like his technique, and I think it's really suited for a certain type of thrower. Now, in this video, I'll just reference his technique as the Polish technique. And what I mean by that is, with this, he doesn't get a very high orbit. He just gets from A to B to C very fast. And from A, I mean the back, B to the middle, C to the finish. There's really no acceleration. It's just basically one speed and gets a lot of momentum-based throwing. I don't know if a lot of you have heard about a momentum-based technique. It's not really taught because it's everyone uses momentum to throw. But what I mean by momentum-based technique is that it relies on momentum more than sheer power. Now, momentum techniques are very dangerous because, one, they can lead to very consistent throws, but the upside is not as high as a power-based throw or just a regular throw that uses power and momentum. But in my opinion, they're the most consistent throws. And the Polish throwers are always some of the most consistent throwers in the world. Look at their hammer throwers, their discus throwers, their shot putters. Don't know much about their draft throwers, but if you look at them, they're always competing for medals. They're always in finals and major competitions. So this style works. It's consistent. In my opinion, the upside is not that much. I think there are things he can do in his technique that will make him throw a lot further. And we'll go over that now. But I think for people who are really, really fast in the ring, this kind of style really suits them. And especially people that maybe are dueling as a shot putter. I think this kind of, like a dual eventer, if you're in like college or high school and you do shot put and discus, I feel like this kind of style for discus, if your primary event is shot put, is also a good style because it doesn't change too much from your shot put technique. It doesn't throw off the orbit of your shot put technique, I should say, because it's kind of like a shot put throw, if I'm going to be quite honest. And you'll see why in a minute. This kind of style is very reminiscent of like how Dylan Armstrong threw, who I made a video of. But we'll get right into this. So you'll notice right off the bat, really love his aggressive left hip. Especially with this kind of style, you want to create energy straight out the back. Alright, you don't want to slowly go out the back and then accelerate. You just want to go straight away. I equate it to a 3-turn and hammer. You just want to go fast out the back because you don't have time to accelerate because you're not doing 4 turns, you're doing 3 turns. You want to think about a momentum-based shot put discus technique kind of like this. Although momentum-based shot put technique doesn't really work that well just because the implement's a lot heavier. In discus, it's a lot more useful to do because it just weighs lighter, and you don't have to be as strong to throw it far as a shot putter, though you still do have to be strong as hell to throw over 65 meters. But I really like how he keeps his left arm in, because it's very dangerous with this kind of technique. It's very common, if you're being taught this or if you want to experiment, to whip this left arm around. And if you do that with this aggressive left, one, you're going to over rotate. Two, you're going to pull your left shoulder and lose your separation. Sorry, I'm so tired. And I just had like 2 burritos. So, I'm a little tired right now. So, excuse me if I am not on my game right now. But I really like this because he's just making sure he's not pulling out the way. And he's keeping this discus back as far as possible. Because momentum-based throwing, you also need to be very flexible because you have to handle a lot more force and you have to be a lot more patient with your upper body. The momentum-based throwing is reliant on a very, very fast lower body. And your upper body being strong enough for you to just hold on and not pull off the finish. So, and obviously he's very strong, and that's why he can get away with this technique. No, I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of things I don't like in this technique. And a lot of it is in the back, and a couple things are in the front. But you're going to see some very big similarities between what Reese Hoffa does and what Mr. Robert Urbanek does. So, out the back, very aggressive. Would like a wider sweep. And the reason why he doesn't have that wide of a sweep is because I really like how he goes out over his left and just turns this super aggressive. And then as he turns his left, you'll notice that his right knee shoots out. But what I would prefer is his right knee to shoot out and go out and around instead of out and in. Because I feel like he loses hip separation. But because he was so aggressive with his left side while staying grounded with his right, he kind of gets away with it. And I would prefer him to have a wider sweep. But that's just me. He's still technically sweeping. If he led with the knee, this would not work. He still has to lead with the groin. There's still a little bit of separation with his knees in the back as he sweeps. And right here, I really like how aggressive he is with that right hip. And this is the reason why this momentum style works in discus. And this is how you create the momentum a lot more. Because normally, if you were going slow at the back and then told to accelerate, which is just the regular style discus throwing, you would keep this left arm long and turn around it and wrap around it. He does not do that. He does not create a wrap because that would slow down his momentum. So what he does is he does kind of like what Reese Hoffa does in the middle and brings that left elbow in. And he does that intentionally. He does that on purpose to really turn him around and get his right foot on the ground a lot sooner than if you were to just hold that. All right, because if he were to just hold his chest and still be sprinting, he would land a little later, and that would cut off and slow down his momentum. When he does this, he keeps accelerating with his momentum and doesn't stop his momentum because he just keeps turning. So he gets here, boom, great in the middle. His hips are facing in a good way, and you'll notice that when he turns, his ass is to sector when he catches with his right foot, or when he actually has weight. So right here, he actually has weight. Sorry. Oh my God. There we go. Ass to sector. Well, I should say right butt cheek to sector. which is what you want because that keeps him stacked. You'll notice that his right is in one straight line. All right. His elbow is slightly bent, but then he extends it while his left is coming down, and that keeps him on his right leg. Now, this is the danger in a momentum-based throw. You see how deep he catches this disc? If you are not strong enough to handle this kind of position and actually turn through it and finish it, you should not do this style. Because with this type of momentum style, you're going to catch the discus super duper deep. And that's why a lot of women throw like this as well. Is because they don't have to be very strong because the discus doesn't weigh anything. So they can just use momentum, just go as bad as hell out the back, and then just catch it really deep and hit it. This is very risky, but can also lead to really far throws if you're strong enough to handle these kind of forces. All right? So, because normally people are not strong enough to do that, and their disc would go straight in the cage or keep going down this sector. And that's called pulling. And he does a great job of staying patient. What the other thing I don't like about the front is that me personally, I would like him to stay over his right longer and actually turn and push against the ground. But also in a momentum-based throw, if he did that, that would slow down his momentum and he would lose all the momentum he created from the back to the middle. So this kind of finish, you have to have the upsides and the downsides. You know, if he stayed on the ground and actually worked the ground, you know, like a Daniel Stahl, that would slow him down. And that would defeat the purpose of this style technique. While this style, he just does, I equate it to like a split jerk kind of thing, where it's just a short little pop, a short little like hip pop. So he doesn't really work it for very long, but it's just a short explosive movement with his hip. So he just works his hip and pushes against the ground a little bit, but really just gets himself turned. And now he's in a great place. I would prefer him to be shifted over on his left instead of jumping up a little. But it's very common in momentum-based styles of throwing. And if you're fast enough, this can work because he doesn't lose that much. Oh, excuse me. So once you get, as long as your hip is turning and you pushed against the ground a little bit, it's not the most ideal thing, but you can throw far from it. All right. If you're athletic enough and you are really good at this style of technique, you can get away with throwing like this. All right. And especially if you're a high schooler, a momentum-based style is really good to throw far in high school. Now, if you don't have strength numbers, it will not translate to a 2K if you get into college and throw in college. And I know this the hard way because this is how I threw in high school. I was a very momentum-based thrower, and it took me a while to adjust to a 2K because I didn't have very strong weight room numbers, and I had a really bad habit of pulling the living hell out of a discus my first 2 years of throwing disc. So, but luckily I became strong enough and kind of shied away from a momentum-based technique. Also, I didn't need to because in high school, the heaviest I weighed was like 198, and the heaviest I weighed in college was around 250. So there's big differences. Even my freshman year of college, I was 225 by the time season went around. So, I could rely a little less on momentum, but I didn't because I don't want to get into that because it means disparaging a coach that will remain nameless. But yeah, this is a very unique style that I don't feel gets talked about a lot because it doesn't translate that well to the 2K unless you're a very specific type of athlete. And the attributes you need is 1, you just need to be fast. 2, you need to be strong enough to be able to handle this. And 3, you need to have supreme confidence in yourself and your technique, because this kind of style does lead to a lot of consistency, because it doesn't require you to be technically perfect. It requires you to just be able to just move fast as hell and just hit a finish. And you can do that more times than not, rather than trying to keep repeating a more advanced technique. But a more advanced technique can also lead to further throws. Now, I'm not saying this technique isn't advanced. It's a very advanced thing, but it's just a different type of advance. It would be very hard for someone like Ryan Krauser to throw like this, or like a Dylan Romani or something like that, or Robert Harding or Virgilius Alekna. It'd be very hard for them to throw like this, because they have different attributes than Robert Urbanek. And they would not throw far like this at all. They throw far with their technique, which is like a normal style technique. Maybe less so for Alekna. Alekna is actually a little bit kind of like this, not as exaggerated. He's kind of the happy medium of both worlds. There are like 3 styles of throwing that I personally think there are. One is momentum based, which is what Robert Urbanek does. 2 is like power technique, which is I think what Krauser does, where he goes slow at the back, really accelerates in the middle, stays grounded, and really uses his mass and his momentum. Well, no, I'm sorry, not momentum. His mass, separation, and staying grounded as long as possible, I feel, is a more power-based technique. And then you got like a happy medium with someone like Virgilius Alekna, who uses momentum. Now, every thrower does use momentum because you are just moving. So technically you are using momentum. But momentum-based throwing relies a lot more on momentum than the other styles. The middle style is basically the best of both worlds, where you use momentum and power. Where you use the momentum and then use the power. You use the momentum in the middle and some in the back, where you go like medium speed in the back, accelerate the hell in the middle, and then in the front you stay grounded as long as possible and just work around and hit the finish. I think that's the best kind of style for throwing for almost everybody. All right, because so someone like Ryan Krauser, obviously he's the GOAT, but not everyone can throw like Ryan Krauser, because not everyone's 330 and like 6'7". A lot of people would throw like Joe Kovacs, who's like 350 with just like muscle, but is also on the shorter side. He's around my height, like 6 foot. Or someone like Tom Walsh. They do a great job at the I call normal technique, where they use mass and power to their momentum, mass, and power to their advantage, and that's why they throw far. Now, whatever style you choose or your coach chooses, I would recommend experimenting with all 3 and just find which one works for you, especially if you're newer to the sport. I'm assuming once you start getting like up to your senior year of high school, or like start competing in college, you probably have a resemblance of what kind of style you're going to be doing by now. So if you're just a beginner and stuff, I would recommend trying all 3 styles and just seeing which one works for you. But that's my piece of advice. But also, if you have a coach, listen to your coach. I'm not your coach. Unless some of my athletes are watching this, then I am your coach. And also, if you don't have a coach, then try it. It won't hurt. But I will say, if you try a new technical thing, try it more than just a week. Try it for at least like 2 weeks. And if it's really not working, just stop it and cut it out, because after 2 weeks is when you start developing the habit, and you don't want to develop a bad habit for you. All right, so after 2 weeks, if it's not working, just stop. Just switch style and find a new one. All right, you got to find what works for you. This works well for Robert Urbanek. He got him a championship medal. He didn't throw over 70 meters with it, but, someone like Peter Malachowski has. He was a very momentum-based thrower as well. And I tend to think that I think this is just the style that's just coached in Poland. And it's very consistent, but Malachowski is like one of the only ones I've seen ever throw over 70 meters like this. So take it with a grain of salt, It's whether or not you like being consistent and considering competing for medals, or you're trying to throw the furthest you possibly can. Now, all three styles can lead to consistency, but this kind of style can lead to a lot of consistency. The power style, if you're not on that day, it's very hard to produce that power. And the same thing goes for the momentum-based style, which if you're not feeling that great, you're feeling very slow that day, chances are it's probably not going to go very well for you. Because this style relies a lot on speed. And that's why I think the middle style is the best, because whether you're not feeling that powerful or not that fast, either or, one of those, you'll be feeling one. And that one will help you a lot. And the middle technique, which I just call the normal technique, is a lot more, I should say, reliable. But also, any style that you do, as long as it's your style and you can repeat it for as many reps as possible, then it's consistent for you. So that's also the one thing to keep in mind. There is no one right technique. There's 4 basic things that you have to do to throw far, no matter what kind of technique or what kind of style you choose. You got to get over the left, and I'm speaking as a right-handed thrower. You got to get over your left hip out the back. You got to sprint. You got to get your right foot in the middle. You got to keep your right heel stiff. Keep turning, get your left foot down, and then smack the finish. That's it. Throwing is not very complicated. A lot of people tend to think it is. But when you really break it down, you're spinning from a big circle to a small circle. Big circle, small circle, boom. That's it. Big circle, small circle, what the hell? Big circle, small circle, finish. That's it. That's really all it is. All right? And it doesn't need it. When you're teaching a beginner and stuff, that's really all it is. It's just the most simplistic thing. When you're trying to throw as far as possible, that's when you start getting into like this kind of stuff, like styles and like how to throw with more momentum, how to like add that little extra something to your throw to throw further. But that's a lot more advanced of a thing. And that's mainly what this style kind of is. Well, what this kind of video is teaching a little more advanced stuff to people that might not know, because I never hear anybody talk about a momentum-based technique. And I don't know if I just made up that term, but it's what it is. So, and I know because I used it for a long time. Now, I will say there is a caveat. This really only works in discus. Shot put, you should not use a momentum-based technique. Even if you're in high school. If you're just going to do high school and you don't want to throw past high school, then go for it. This technique will not work with a 16-pound shot at all. I don't care how strong you are, because nobody's strong enough to just throw with just momentum-based technique. I don't care if you're Joe Kovacs or what. You're not strong enough to do that. All right. So, this really only works for discus. So I will say that. It works very well, especially with high school discus. So if you just want to throw in high school and have no desire to throw in college, go for this kind of style. But also, if you want to throw like this in college, make sure you're strong enough in your upper body to handle these kind of forces in the front. All right, because as long as you have that kind of strength to do it, you can throw far from this, because a momentum-based style does equate to a lot more speed and a deeper catch position. So if you have the strength to do this, to throw like this, you can. But I will say this kind of technique better suits women than men, if I'm going to be quite honest. Because women do not move up weight, so they don't even have to worry about that. And women tend to be faster, but not as powerful in the ring as men, just because the woman's implements weigh a lot less. So you can also kind of do this with the woman's shot as well. Although I will say the same caveat applies, just because a 1K is way less weight than a 4K. So I will say that. But if you're an absolute powerhouse, then screw it. Go ahead, do it. But for a woman's discus, you could definitely throw really far like this. In fact, most women throw like this with a very momentum-based style of throwing. Probably one of the most famous ones is Daniel Caballero from Cuba, the 2015 world champion in discus, and a 70-meter thrower. And she used a hell of a lot of momentum. Sandra Perkovic also... no, not really, not Sandra Perkovic. Valerie Allman kind of throws a little bit like it as well. Not as much. She's more of like the normal style technique. And then like Sandra Perkovic is more of the power-based technique, I would say. But, I mean, those are all 70-meter throwers that I named, all three. So, if that doesn't prove that each style works, it works. But they're just different types of athletes, so. But, before I end this video, let's just get to his, back to Robert Urbanek and get to this finish. Get to his finish. Sorry about this long rant. So it's here, really good. One thing you got to watch out for with a momentum-based style of technique, you don't really want to turn this right foot and like stay grounded. You want to be super aggressive with your right hip. All right? And the reason why is because if you went and just stayed on the ground for a long time and just grinded the ground. Oh, sorry. Oh, the burritos are killing me. If you stayed on the ground and really grinded the ground, that would slow you down, and that would be defeating the purpose of this kind of a momentum-based style of throwing. You want to equate it to more like a split jerk in the weight room, how it's just a short little hip pop, just boom. You notice here, his right hip just boom, gets into the throw. And I really like this block, even though he's in the air. So it's not the most ideal block, but you'll notice his left does not move really at all. The disc out of his hand right there, he's still blocking, and then he reverses. So that's very good. So a lot of there have been very successful throwers that throw far without a grounded left. It's not the most ideal thing. I would prefer, and I coach more of like a Daniel Stahl or Gerd Kanter type of release, or like a Wolfgang Schmidt, where you tend to stay grounded and do a non-reverse reverse. And if you want more on that, watch my video on Wolfgang Schmidt, because he's basically the master of that kind of style of throwing. So I'm not going to get that much into it, but this is very reminiscent of the style used for momentum-based throwing, this kind of release. That because you're not really staying grounded at long, you won't be on the ground very long. If you don't stay grounded with your right, chances are you're not going to stay grounded with your left. But he's only off his left for like one frame. So he's not losing that much. So I will say that. And then boom, right there. Nice reverse, balanced. And yeah, that's basically his entire throw. There's not that much to say about his actual throw, because it's just just simple, gets to the point. And yeah, that's really it. Hope you guys learned something. Let me know if you have any questions or if any throwers you want me to make a video of in the comments. And see y'all later. Have a good day.